Hi everyone, it's Monica Taylor, and I'm back to share with you a project that I created using a C6 die from Eileen Hull. Now this die is called Passport Book, and it is lots of fun to work with. It is one of the heavier steel dies, so you're able to cut not only paper, but some thick chipboard and mat board as well. The paper stack that I'm working with today is from Graphic 45, and it's called Master Detective Collection. And what I like about the Graphic 45 paper is that not only is it thicker cardstock, but it's also double-sided. So when you're flipping the pages on your Passport book, you have decorative paper on every single page. Now I don't know what is more fun, creating the book or actually decorating it. I had a lot of fun working with tons of Tim Holtz ephemera and Idea-ology. Now as I flip through the pages, you can see that I also created little pockets to be able to house my ephemera. I've used some of the paper dolls to decorate this book, as well as some of the framed portraits. On some of the pages I did create belly bands because I want this not only to be a book that someone can enjoy, but I wanted it to be a keepsake. So these Tim Holtz framed portraits can easily be removed, and you can replace them with your own portraits. Perhaps you have some great Halloween pictures that you want to add to this book. And I also made sure to leave some spaces for journaling, so that way you can document the special night. Alright, so now that you've had a peek of the book, let me go ahead and show you how I created it. So I started out with 4 pieces of 12 by 12 Graphic 45 paper. And as I indicated, the set that I'm using is the Master Detective set. Now this paper stack also comes in a paper stack, but I only needed 4 pieces. Now you want to start out with a piece that's going to be your focal point on your cover. And since it is a Master Detective book, I wanted to have some sort of inspector or a clue on top of the outside of the card. And then the matching paper, they're going to be for the 3 pages inside of your book. You want to get paper that's complementary, so I went with the black and the beige. Now what I really love about this set is, even though it's a Master Detective set, it has a Halloween theme. As you can see, it has lots of skeletons and goblins and spider webs within it. And they also have a matching chipboard set that is a great set for embellishments. I'm also using another Halloween set that I had in my stash. Now when I'm putting together any project that has lots of pieces, I like to cut out everything beforehand. I like to get it somewhat organized before I get started. The C6 die cut that I'm using is from Eileen Hull, and it's called Passport Book. And it's really awesome. It is one of the bigger dies, but enables you to cut out not only the page inserts, but the cover as well. Now when I'm creating this Passport Book, I like to use the binding with some thicker paper. And the paper that I like to use is actually a chipboard pack from Little B. When you cut it out with your Big Shot, it's going to score the lines for you, but you're going to want to go ahead and get your scoreboard and your scoring tool and emphasize the lines just a little bit more. Prepare it so that way when you are putting it together, it will fold easily. To create the cover of my Passport book, I start out with some black cardstock, and then I take 2 pieces of designer cardstock and I mat the black cardstock in between them. Rather than using just regular adhesive off of my ATG gun, I do take some stronger binding tape for my cover. I'm adding this binding tape to all 4 sides of my cardstock, and then I'm going to adhere it to the black panel. Now you don't want to get ahead of yourself. If you are going to add any sort of embellishments that require brads, you want to make sure that you don't jump in and add the back panel yet. Just take your time, add your first panel, and then figure out your design. Now for the outside of my Passport book, I knew that I wanted to add that fun detective picture, but I also knew that I wanted to add some of the new Halloween Idea-ology items from Tim Holtz. The Halloween word bands have some great captions, and I thought that would look really great on the top of the card. I also knew that I wanted to add a little spider to complement the cardstock and have it look like the detective was looking at the spider with his spyglass. Now, if you are adding a word band, you want to make sure that you take a look at where the binding for the book is going to end up. You want to make sure that it's centered, but because you have the binding, putting it directly in the middle of your cover cardstock isn't going to actually be accurate. So take a minute and look at your binding and then decide where your word band needs to go. Now from there, I typically like to add a little bit of adhesive to my word band just to hold it in place while I'm adding my brads. And then I'm using a simple piercing tool to poke some holes through the edges and add my brads. So now that we have our word band in place, we can go ahead and adhere our picture and then any other embellishments that we want to add. Now for this cover, like I said, I wanted to add a picture of the detective, and I am going to add that little spider to make it look like it is a specimen he's looking at through his looking glass. Alright, so now that we've added our embellishments, it's time to put that second decorative cardstock on the inside portion of your panel. Now as you can see, by us waiting to add that decorative piece, you're going to be able to cover up those holes and the brads on the inside, and it's going to look like a nice finished piece. So at this point, you're ready to decorate your back panel. Typically on the back panel, you're not adding any sorts of brads or embellishments, so you can go ahead and adhere the inner portion and the outer portion of your panel. Okay, so now that we have both the front and the back decorated, it's time to adhere those pieces to your binding. Now again, I recommend using a strong adhesive for this because this is the structure of your book and you want to make sure that it holds together. You should have some really nice score lines to guide you. So go ahead and add your adhesive just a few millimeters away from that score line. You don't want to put it right next to that score line or right on top of it, I should say. You want to have a little bit of space so that way the book will open and close easily. And once the front and the back are adhered, you have a nice book cover. Alright, so now it's time to go ahead and work on the inserts. You should have 3 pieces of paper that have been scored in the middle. And to guide you, you do have the 2 holes in the middle of your paper that you should have scored through. Now because my inside panel was a little bit darker, I decided to have the lighter color show on the outside. You also want to take into consideration what the image is. This particular piece is actually a floor plan, and when I folded it over, I realized that when you open it up, you won't see the entire floor plan. So I decided to make this piece my middle insert. Now there's a couple of ways that you can actually bind your book. The first way is to use baker's twine, but I like to use sheer ribbon. And the reason I like the sheer ribbon is a couple of reasons. Number one, you're able to get a nice tight knot when you're using the sheer ribbon. And then secondly, I think it makes the back of the binding look really, really nice. You can choose to use the same color of ribbon or mix it up a little bit. For my book, I decided to use this sheer ribbon for the first page and the last page, and then I came in with some orange ribbon for the middle. And when you tie these ribbons together, they really complement each other. So once you've got your ribbon through each of your pages, you're going to go ahead and now put the ribbon through your back binding. Your ribbon should go through fairly easily, but just take your time. At this point, you certainly don't want to tear your binding and you don't want to tear your paper. And once you've got the ribbon all the way through, you're going to go ahead and open it up and face it down so you can go ahead and start tying your ribbon. Now one thing you want to do here is you want to make sure that it is tight enough to hold your pages, but not so tight that it's going to tear your pages. Just make sure you have a good feel for it. After you tie your center ribbon, go ahead and pick up your book and just move your pages a little bit to make sure they're not too loose. And once you're happy with the knot, make sure you do have a double knot and you can start on the other 2 pieces of ribbon. Now for decorative purposes, I like to crisscross my ribbon, and as I'm showing you here. But again, that's purely decorative. I just like the way that it looks. And I also like to tie my ribbons one on top of each other. When you see the finished book, you're going to see that it looks really nice. Now, if you plan on adding any charms to your binding, you're going to want to do that on the third ribbon. So typically what I'll do is I'll put my ribbon through, tie the first knot, and then I'll add my charms and then re-knot it. So I hope that you've enjoyed my process for putting together this Master Detective Passport book. I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create this book, along with the links to the stores. If you would like to connect with me, you can find links to all my social media, including my personal YouTube channel, over at tailormadecards4u.com. If you've enjoyed the video, I would sure appreciate a thumbs up, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of the project. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.